Hey everyone, so for today's video, we are going to be talking everything 13 Reasons Why Season 3. Obviously, this is going to have a couple of spoilers in it. Not a couple, a lot. So if you don't want to be spoiled by my video, then go ahead and watch it first and then come back to my video and watch everything I have to say. I do have notes on my phone, so I'm sorry if I look at my phone a lot, but that's what I'm doing. Basically, today's video is just going to be a couple of the things that I loved from the season, as well as a couple of theories that I have or had throughout the season 3. Okay, so let's start off with the things that I loved. So the first thing that I really loved was watching Tyler get so much better. And I felt like it really showed the power of what good friendship and people caring about you can do. I also love that counseling was a major part of this season, and I feel like the counselor that Tyler talked to was a lot more understanding and a lot more empathetic than Mr. Porter was. I do think that the characters kind of overwatched Tyler a bit throughout the season, but I kind of understand why. But I do think that the fact that his friends overwatched him really led to him coming out about his assault to Jessica and to Clay. So I think that it was really awesome to see him get better and really empowering to people who might have also been victims of sexual assault to see how much better someone can get with great friendship, counseling, all of that great stuff. Okay, so this one's a little bit tough. But the second thing I loved most about this season was watching Bryce try to become a better person. I don't like Bryce, obviously. There have been so many things in this whole show from season to season that have just made you want to hate Bryce. But it gets to a point where he's kind of broken by Hannah's tapes. He finally listens to Hannah's tapes and he's broken by them. And then from then on, he really tries, seemingly from what we hear, at least from the narrative that we hear and see, he's trying so much harder to get better. It was just really refreshing to see a character that was so villainized become a better person in the series, but you don't often see. Usually the bad guy is the bad guy the entire time. The third thing that I liked the most was the addition of Ani into the Liberty High School friendship group. She is just so cool. She's smart. She ends up with Clay, which is awesome. So I really liked Ani. I thought that she was an amazing addition to the group. Some people might think she was kind of random, which I think she was, but it's cool to get all of the narration from someone who wasn't actually there or a part of the group when all this stuff happened with Hannah. So the fourth thing that I loved was the cliffhanger that they left us on at the very end of season 3. You see a boat that's ironically called the Predator, and it is sweeping the ocean floor, I guess, for fish. But when the net comes up, they find all of the guns that Tyler had used that Clay and Tony disposed of after his near incident in season 2. This led me to believe that there would be a season 4, and I did look it up, and there is a season 4 slated for 2020. I'm super excited about it. I think that I have a couple of questions in my theories that will be answered in season 4. So I'm really excited for season 4. And I really loved season 3. I loved everything about season 3, but those were the 4 main things that I loved. Alright, so on to my theories, and I will be leaning heavily on my notes for this part. I'm sorry, but they're all my own theories. I'm sure other people have these theories, but these are theories that I thought of, and I actually wrote these notes. But the first theory is that Bryce is either a psychopath or a sociopath. And I say this for a number of reasons. So in the last episode of season 3, Jessica plays the tape that Bryce made her for the whole group. And basically he talks about, owning up to what he did. He flat out says that he was guilty of doing the things that he did to Hannah and to Jessica and to a couple of other girls. He said, you can show this tape to whoever you want, or not show, but you can play this tape for whoever you want. I will make, this is 100% a confession. And then he goes on to say, he's trying to be a better person, but he knows that deep down he's the same person that he was when he hurt Jessica.
I'd like to say that I'm not the same person. What I've come to realize is that I'll always be.
But he's trying to be better. So, as we know from our good friend Shane Dawson and his series on sociopaths and the little bit of education that they also give about psychopaths, we know that psychopaths are born and sociopaths are made. I think that Bryce is more of a sociopath because he was kind of given everything he wanted in life. And I remember, I think In one of the episodes, his mom says, like, since you were 12, you know, you were so unappreciative of your toys and all this kind of stuff like that. So I think it's possible that he was made into a sociopath. So Bryce exhibits some telltale signs of a sociopath. For one thing, he's always been charming to people, and he's always been very bold. He has the ability to make people think he's on their side, even though he'd do anything to protect himself or his family. If we're talking about psychopaths, they're said to possess egotistical traits, which obviously Bryce is very egotistical. He acts boldly. He has no empathy or remorse.
I wish I could tell you that there was a tiny voice in my head telling me that what I was doing was wrong. I never had one of those.
But obviously he's trying to change, which makes me believe that he wasn't born that way. By the way that Bryce is acting by the end of season 3, you are kind of led to believe that he's trying to change his behavior. And if he's a psychopath, he can't do that. But the other telltale sign of a psychopath or a sociopath is trying to manipulate people to think that they're changing when they're really not. And so it's kind of up in the air which one he is for me. And the last point I want to make on this is Mr. Porter does tell either Ani or Clay or both of them that there was a confrontation with Bryce at his house that Ani witnessed. And basically Bryce was mad because Mr. Porter had been called by his mom. And his mom basically says to Mr. Porter, I've tried everything. And then Mr. Porter says later, Bryce had manipulated all of his previous counselors into thinking he was really trying and really getting better when he would just continue the behavior. So that's my first theory. The second theory is that Bryce is actually fooling everyone again. I remember when the flashback showed of Jessica and Alex at the pier after Zach had attacked Bryce and they were trying to help him up. As soon as they were helping him up, Bryce kind of went off and was like, I'm going to end Zach. I'm going to end his career. Like, he started going off. It was then when Alex was like, you've hurt everyone I've ever loved, because Alex and Zach are very close. But he realizes then that he's not going to change. And I think someone says in their narration, maybe it was Ani, she said something about, you know, breaking the cycle. He wanted to break the cycle. So that leads me to believe that Bryce was never really going to change and that he was just putting on this front to make it seem like he was changing. Something happened to Zach's mom. So Zach is really weird in this season, and then we find out towards the end of the season that he feels responsible for killing Bryce because of what happened. So just a little bit of a refresher, there was a fight during homecoming and Bryce took the opportunity to tackle Zach and break his leg after he found out that his ex-girlfriend was leaning on Zach for support. Zach came to the police and confessed this story. At the beginning of his confession, he says that his mom drove him to the game.
My mom, she drove me to the game.
And then he says that after the game, he follows the Hillcrest bus back to Hillcrest and then follows Bryce from Hillcrest to the pier, and that's how he found Bryce to beat him up. Future editing Gabby here. So I just rewatched the clip, and he basically said that they sent him home, but he didn't stay home. So I kind of get into this theory later, but I do mention if he was sent home with a broken leg, I feel like his mom, if she was around, would be watching him like a hawk rather than just like letting him sneak off. I guess that's what he's saying. And also, I have a brother who played football for 4 years in high school, who played and was a part of the team on his college team. It does not take them that long to get on the bus and get back home. Like, they stop the game. Presumably the game is over due to everything that happened on the field, because everyone is sent inside and they say like, your night's over. To me, he's saying that he went to the hospital, they saw him, they x-rayed him, they did all of this stuff for him, and they sent him home, and then he still had time to leave from home to go back to Hillcrest and then wait for Bryce and then follow Bryce. That doesn't seem right to me. Just wanted to throw that in there. Now, to me, there's flaws in that because I don't remember him saying or seeing him borrowing someone's car. So if his mom drove him to the game, he wouldn't have had his car, logistically, if you're logistically thinking that through. And more on that, Zach breaks his leg, and then he gets in a car and drives around. If his mom is as protective as she has been in previous seasons. She was like very supportive of his sports career, wanted him to get like a scholarship, all this kind of stuff. And she finds out he breaks his leg and she lets him drive. That just seems a little weird to me. It seems like she would have been contacting him and would have been like, hey, how'd the game go? And I feel like from Zach's nature, he would have told his mom that he broke his leg and she would have wanted to drive him around, but that's not what happened. So it was really weird. We also hear him say that he's really tired because his mom made him stay up to do laundry, which I think it's interesting because I feel like his mom wouldn't say that because she would want him to get his rest and do well at school the next day, do well in his academics so he can get into college. But I think that might have been a front for why he was losing sleep about what happened to Bryce, because he felt that he was the one who killed Bryce when really it was Alex. But I guess Zach did have a hand in beating up Bryce and leading to his death. We know, I think it was in season 2, it was 1 or 2, that Zach got frustrated with his mom and walked off of the field with his sister. And so there's obviously some tension there, and there's obviously some frustration between Zach and his mom. And so we know that they're not super close or anything like that. So that could be some indication that he did something. He also felt like his life was spiraling out of control, and obviously he was losing sleep over it. He was getting really nervous about Bryce's situation. So it's possible that he got back at his mom by hurting her somehow, and then went to the police, and like he was willing to give up his football scholarship, which was his life. So who's to say he wasn't willing to give up more than that? All right, so theory number 4 is very far-fetched. I don't necessarily believe this for myself, but it is a pose of a question, I guess. So I think a good theory number 4, is that Deputy Sandahl wasn't really worried that Alex had committed the crime at first. He was more concerned about his wife committing the crime and killing Bryce. And the reason that I say that is long. It seems clear to me from the first 2 seasons that Deputy Sandahl is a pretty strict guy. And it seems like Alex has a bit more of a good relationship with his mom than he does with his dad. And so, first of all, I feel like his mom is much more likely to go through his room and make sure he doesn't have anything. And then his dad comes in, we see his dad go through his drawers and find everything. But as we know, Deputy Sandahl's wife works at the hospital as a nurse, and it's possible that she went through her son's stuff and found the steroids and saw that Bryce's name was on the bottle. I don't find it too far-fetched that she remembered what happened with the tapes and remembered that the actions of Bryce against Hannah were partially to blame for Alex's suicide attempt, and she didn't want Alex to get mixed up with Bryce again. The other thing is that obviously Alex drives his mom's car, but that's one of the first things that Deputy Sandahl mentions to Ani.
I've got tire treads consistent with my wife's car.
He said the tire tracks match my wife's car. And so obviously from what we saw in the entire season, we know that the tire tracks were his wife's car, but Alex was driving the car. But my theory at the time was that Alex had snuck out with Jessica to go to the pier, and his mom had followed them and was going to confront Bryce, but after her son dealt with Bryce, she didn't have to anymore. So that was my theory. It's not a great theory. There's a lot of holes in it, obviously, but that was my theory. All right, so the 5th and final theory that I have is that Clay has schizophrenia. Obviously, we know that something's going on with Clay's mental health. It has been since the first season of 13 Reasons Why. He has seen hallucinations of Hannah. He has been super needy, super clingy onto people. And there's reason for this. Obviously, when we first saw the vision of Hannah that Clay was seeing, we thought it was just because he was really messed up from her death. But his parents seem to really be digging deep about this in season 3. So after the security tape comes out of Clay at Bryce's house pointing a gun at Bryce, they ask Justin, because he's also in the film, they ask him, like, what was going on, why did he do that, because he pointed it at Bryce and then he pointed it at his head. So obviously he was hearing things, he was seeing things he didn't want to hear, and he thought that he could end that. And they said, was it like Hannah was in his head, or he was just thinking of Hannah? And obviously Justin lies and says, oh, he was just thinking of Hannah. Like, but we know that he's like hearing Hannah and hearing Bryce later on in this season in his head and seeing them. And that led to his mom actually saying, like, we could use his mental health as an excuse in this trial if it goes that far. And obviously the dad's like, I don't know. And it seems to be they seem to be kind of playing with the idea that he might have a mental health illness that we don't know about. But I think I'm pretty solid that they know that he has a history of mental health issues at this point. All right, so I have some notes here. Schizophrenia is characterized by hallucinations and delusions. So obviously he's hallucinating Hannah and Bryce later on in the season. When they're already dead, so we know that it's not actually the character, it's a hallucination of them. Clay also may have what they call aromatic delusions, which is the delusion that someone is in love with them when they're not. And we kind of see this with Hannah and with Ani. I think Hannah did love Clay, and at the end, Ani loves Clay, or has some kind of relationship with Clay. But there are times when both of them feel like Clay is kind of reading their cues incorrectly. So I think that it will be interesting in season 4 to see where his mental health status goes. Alright, so I've shared with you everything that I love. I've shared with you my 5 theories. I would love to hear your theories. I would love to know what you loved from this season. And I guess I'll leave this video there. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, check back every Tuesday and Thursday for new videos, and I will see you next time. Bye!